Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reach and Teach. I am Joanna, your host, and as people are just getting notified to find this and go online, I want to introduce everyone to myself. If you haven't met me before on our weekly show here, or my friend Steph, who is actually on this side of me, I'm realizing, on our call here. Stephanie, would you tell everyone who you are? Let's start there.
So I am originally from Toronto, Canada, which is how I know Joanna. We worked together for many years. And I currently live in Redding, California, up in Northern California, and I work at Bethel Music. And so that is the record label arm of Bethel. And I'm a creative producer for our events.
Yeah, so, let's start there. For the benefit of me and everybody else, we talk about your job a ton, but your job has, changed so much. Even when you were on my podcast, where it made digital like a year ago, and your job has changed since then. So if people heard the podcast episode with you, update us. What is your job now for Bethel Music? What do you do?
I'm not sure we know. It's a bit of a catch-all. My friend actually tried to describe it the other day, and she said, my job is like playing a game of Twister.
Yeah.
And you spin the dial, and they're like, Steph, like left hand on red, spin the dial. Okay. Right leg on orange. And so on.
You mean like you're being stretched? You're saying like your Bethel Music job is lots of things and hard to explain.
Over.
Okay.
Yes, it's very hard to explain.
Well, okay, so try and explain.
Okay, I'll try. So basically, I work in our events department. So we run tours and conferences, or any gathering over 100 people is considered a official event.
Okay.
And so that means basically how it looks and feels from the attendees' perspective, how they interact with us and how they interact with whatever the theme or the brand is, comes through me. And then also what's happening on the stage in terms of song content. Or for our conferences, it might be working with a schedule, prepping content for different sessions. And it's really a collaborative effort. There's many more people involved, from our production manager, our events director, our design team. I'm kind of just the in-between piece that pieces it all together to make sure that we are unified in what we're doing.
Okay. And so obviously, like, the reason I wanted to get you on today is because obviously your job has changed. Like, so many of our jobs were, this is a community of people who are doing communications and media and trying to figure out how to pivot a whole organization online, where maybe parts of it have been digital, but now everything is. So, like, what is that looking like for you as a team right now? Is everyone working at home? Are you guys all based in one location? Are you spread all over the country? What does Bethel Music do for that?
So we do have a couple locations. Our main location's here in Redding. We do have an office in Nashville that's primarily for publishing. Right now, everyone's working at home, and so lots of Zoom meetings, lots of emails and text threads. And it means that some people's jobs have shifted into other areas that they might not work in.
Yeah.
We're kind of on loan to other departments. Those of us who don't have events right now are working on some other things. And really that's in all areas of the church as well. Our church staff is, I think over 700 people.
Yeah.
And there's many people.
700 people on the staff of the church. I didn't know that it was that many. Okay.
Yeah. And so many of them are being repurposed in other areas. We have a department called Global Response, which is where we work with the state, in global response needs and crises. So we've been approved to have some of our staff repurposed for that. And again, we did something similar to that when we had a fire come through Redding a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah, that was like a shutdown in a totally different way of like normal operation. So do you feel like that's interesting? Do you feel like you learned as a team some stuff then that you're applying now? Because for most churches, this is so new. Everyone's learning as they go.
Yeah, I mean, we're all wearing masks again, which is We did that during the fire, as you
well,
know.
I visited
here,
you, right? I came during that time and I was wearing the mask and I remember feeling so claustrophobic. And now this is just like not just during the fires in Reading, but also just like normal life. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you go through a community crisis like that, there's an aspect that you learn about what's important and what matters, which is the people next to you, your neighbors. And so a lot of the other stuff seems to kind of be put aside a little bit. And I think as a community, we're really just honing in on what the important things are.
Right.
And that's people and caring for people.
Yeah. So, like, what does that look like on the internet? Or maybe like, what are some ways that you as a church community or are trying to do that when you can't actually be near each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, it's not part of my job, but I'll say some of the things that I've noticed. And one of the things is with music at the label. We're a record label, so we produce music. And there's a great need right now for people who are looking for comfort. We just released an album called Peace. And
can we talk about that?
How it all happened. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about peace.
Or maybe we're about to get to it, but one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and I posted in like the caption for this video, was that I'd love to talk about this album Peace you guys just came out with. Was this week, like I think it was Friday. So like, was that the plan? Did this come out? Did you guys just decide to do that? Or like, was this like, this was always the plan and it was like perfect timing, or how did this happen?
Yeah. So it wasn't the plan. It's been something that's been worked on for, I think, over a year and a half, and really came out of this vision from the producers, Ed Cash, and he and a friend of his had this vision for this album that would just bring real comfort and peace to people, and that was not quite like our Without Words albums, which are instrumental only, but these actually do have singing in it. And they studied sound and like what sounds and frequencies actually bring peace to people, like scientifically, not just, just not something that sounds cool, but it's actually scientifically something that calms people. And so it's been something they've kind of been plugging away at for a while. And then it wasn't the plan to release it anytime soon. I think it actually wasn't planned to be released for over a year.
Okay. So it was like the songs were done, or like this last couple of weeks, the team has like it wasn't going to be released because it wasn't ready, or just in terms of production, or it was more in terms of the schedule of other releases. Like was all this ready to go?
Yeah, we had other releases scheduled. Yeah. In terms of production, I'm actually not sure where they're at with it. I do know that when things started happening with the coronavirus, it's something that we decided was this really could be helpful for people, and we should just get it out. So we just decided to push a few other things that we had planned and move that one up in the line. And it's been a real blessing to me. I actually didn't hear it until a couple of days before it released. And there's one song in it called I'll Be Everything that Jen Johnson sings. And it is just so moving. Like I just found myself in tears because it's really written from the perspective of like God singing over you. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing right now, is to remember like God is actually singing over us in the midst of all of this. Yeah.
Well, I know I started kind of playing it in the house here in my home here, like last week when it came out, like just sort of like having it play in the background. And so some of the songs are super familiar, and some of the songs were new. And so it's interesting that you're talking about there was some sort of exploration into the science of peace. Yeah. Like what kinds of tones or sounds or keys or instrumentality can like make people have a more calm effect. Yeah. Because a lot of worship music is about the opposite, right? It's about like hyping people up.
Yeah, and this is definitely the opposite of that. It's just like something that'll put you to sleep. But if anyone's interested in learning more about that, there's actually a video on Bethel Music's Instagram. It's probably 25 or 30 minutes long. with the producers and with Brian and Jen, and I think Carrie Job and Corey Asbury and John and Melissa Helser on it, talking about some of the vision for the album and the inspiration.
And that's on IGTV, or that's YouTube, yes, or where do you want to send people for that?
I believe it is on Bethel Music's Instagram.
Okay, we'll check that out. So, Bethel Music is making some pivots. Bethel, the church, is making some pivots, and I love that you've reminded us that if anyone follows the story of Bethel as a church, like just a few years ago, people are just jumping on now. Just a few years ago, with the car, is called car fires, right?
Yep.
Like there was this huge like pause of business as usual, everyone wearing masks and everyone trying to serve people in need. So crisis is not unfamiliar to you guys. But what are you seeing though? Like you're in California, and you're in Northern California, where like a ton of, there's been a ton of news coming out of, especially in the early days, like San Francisco was one of the first cities to kind of go into lockdown. What have you been seeing or learning about like what God is doing? Or, I mean, it's a broad question. Yeah. What are you kind of learning right now about what's going on all over the place?
I think personally for me, I've seen this time as just like such an invitation into what God's doing, and to remind myself that he's still working in the midst of everything that's happening. And I mean, I'm reminded of what happened with the car fire here in Redding, such tragedy and such loss for people losing their homes and losing businesses. And to see like the fruit at what happened afterwards and what God did through that time. And that though there was a lot of loss, there's so much fruit that came out of that season and so much growth. And I look towards this season as the same thing, you see a lot of posts about, productivity, making sure you're being productive at home. What are you doing? What are you going to come out of this with a new skill or new ability? And I think that's all good. But I think what I'm learning is like the true meaning of productivity is just doing the things you're supposed to do and not carrying on with busy work, just being busy because we used to be very busy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an area that I think God's sharpening in me and in a lot of people, is really stripping back all the crap, to be honest, and honing in on what he's really calling us to do.
Yeah.
And being productive in the right things.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's so easy for us. Like there's an endless list of to-dos, you work in an events-based role, and so there's always the next event, or I would imagine you're not planning the next event, you're planning like the one like a year or a year and a half out. So there's so now like like how do we even plan? Like I think it's this invitation to just like never has it been more true that like don't worry about tomorrow, it has enough problems, like worry about today, because like we don't know what's going to happen. And it's kind of beautiful actually in some ways. We pretend like we have more control than we actually do, like we fool ourselves, and now this is like showing us, right? Like
we're actually like forced to submit our plans to the Lord, because they are really out of our control. And I think that's something that I've just been really impressed to watch our leaders at Bethel Music walk us through. Like every day is a new change. Something changes every day, literally. Every day, a new piece of information.
Like I have
got
here
a notification that 3 more things are canceled. Events that people were supposed to do in June, and I just can't hold it that tightly anymore.
Yeah, this guy Ben, who's commenting on Instagram, I'm seeing all these comments are coming through. Some people who know you are saying hello to you on Facebook. Colda Takio, James Adams are saying hello.
Oh, hello.
But this guy Ben Emmons, I don't know him, and he says, "Yeah, I can't get beyond a week out." ... And I think what he's saying is like you just can't plan. You can't anticipate planning much farther.
Yeah. And I think that's actually okay. Like, it's kind of this thing where, like, our strategies are just being blown up a little bit. Like, really. But I don't think that keeps us necessarily from planning. It doesn't mean stop planning. I think it just means hold everything so loosely. Because I think in planning, there's a lot of creativity that can be grown and shaped. And it's not lost necessarily. because it doesn't happen. There's something that we'll learn through planning and building strategy. It just means that you have to hold it very loosely and be open to whatever happens and trust that God will ultimately, he's ultimately got it, and he's ultimately gone before us and will take care of us.
Yeah. Well, and on a practical level, like when you're as a team, as a creative team with your Bethel team, what is that looking like now just on a practical level? Because I would imagine most creative teams get together in a room and there's sticky notes and whiteboards and, you know, digital content, and you're doing the creative process or the planning process together. So like, what are you guys doing for that now? Or what are the tools that are helping you communicate at a distance? Just as like a practical thing for people who are leading creative stuff themselves.
Practically, Zoom is amazing. Sharing your screen on Zoom, super helpful. I mean, it's really gone back to just like the simple stuff, like writing a Word document, throwing a few photos in there.
Yeah, fair enough.
Vision boards, Pinterest boards. It's good. Yeah, it's gone very simple. Very, very simple, and lots of phone calls and text threads. So I wouldn't say there's like some like special app we've discovered or something. It's just simple communication using whatever tools we've got, which is, I mean, we work a lot in the Google Suite, so we do a lot of that.
Yeah. And so probably not a Word document as much as like a Google Doc is probably.
Yeah, a Google Doc. Yeah, Google Doc, Google Sheets.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, anyone watching, if you have questions about what that all looks like right now for Steph and the Bethel team, she doesn't do all the jobs, but whatever insight she can give us into that, please ask some questions. I just see Keisha is on here saying, doesn't feel like we get back to life how it used to be. And then God seems to be up to having a new life, and she's excited. Yeah, there's sort of this like sense of something new. There's a new normal coming, that it's not going to look exactly like so coming out of this idea of like holding productivity loosely, and like you love strategy so much, you have it as a tattoo.
Yes, I do.
Like there's a symbol somewhere on your arm. So that's like that means strategy. So like, what is the strategist in you do? Like, how have you been doing in the last month? Like maybe like the early days, what did that feel like to you as a strategy person versus like settling into it now?
It probably took me about a week to like wind down a bit off of what we were doing. It was a bit shocking at first because I was actually on tour, and when we were 4 days into a big US tour, and the tour manager started saying like, this coronavirus thing's getting really serious. And I remember we were all sitting on the bus going like, no way this is going to get canceled. And I went around the room and I jokingly took bets like, what do you guys think? Like, what are the chances? You know, I love stats, so like I'm getting everyone's prediction.
Like the likelihood of us like losing the tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were heading home for 3 days off, and we're all debating like who thought we'd be coming back and who thought this tour was over. And most people thought like that there's no way that this was going to be canceled. And it was about an hour before I was to board my flight to head out back on tour.
Where were you supposed to go?
We were flying to Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
And so I was here in Redding, just got up and was starting to get ready to head to the airport. Our airport's only 10 minutes away, so you can get there very quickly. And then we got the text saying that the tour's canceled. So that was a big shocker.
Yeah.
And then actually pretty slowly things started getting canceled, like 2 weeks in advance and a month in advance. And now cancellations are starting to look into June.
Yeah.
And so it started to become a lot more real. And then we started to tune in a little bit more with some of the news and some of the press briefings from the White House to see, hey, what's really going on here? Because it felt so surreal for a tour to be canceled.
And not just, and are you using the word cancel, or are you saying it's postponed? Like, is this sort of
Yeah.
I mean, because in terms of like we're talking about strategy and planning and how do we plan in the we can barely look past the week.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, I'm not trying to ask you things you can't talk about, but are you hoping to go back out, or are you like at this point like we're not even talking about that?
Yeah. So this tour that we're on wasn't our own tour, it's something hosted by Compassion.
Okay.
And so I'm actually not sure what their language is. There's no
Yeah.
plans right now. It's not being rebooked right now. So, I mean, there's nothing that I know that is being rebooked.
Yeah.
In terms of our own events, we are postponing our Heaven Come conference, which was supposed to be in May in LA.
Right.
And so that's postponed. And then our worship school that was supposed to be here in Redding in the summer is also postponed.
I mean, that's a huge annual thing for your team. Like Heaven Come, huge conference, thousands of people show up to. I was at the one in Dallas this year, got to see you do your work, got to see like all this come together. You're talking, I mean, just for people who are doing, just kind of joining in on the call, they don't know exactly who you are or what your role is, but can you say maybe at Heaven Come, like the big conferences, what is that like? What is your involvement there, or what is the kind of team you're part of creating?
Yeah. So my job for Heaven Come really starts right after they book the venue and decide what date the event is going to be. I get together with our creative team and start discussing what do we feel the theme is for the conference, and share a little bit of my own kind of vision for it, along with a few other people who we call our stakeholders of the event. And then the creative team goes away for a bit and they come back with usually about 3 or 4 pitches with how they bring that to life. And we go through it and refine it. And then we usually pick 1, maybe 2 as a small team that we want to pitch to our senior leadership team. So that's Brian
These are
and
like
Jen,
visual
Jonathan.
Concepts or themes for the whole conference. Yeah.
Yeah. Visual concepts and themes. That's graphics, web landing pages, promo videos, scriptures that we're pulling from, the kind of overarching story, all of it. And then from there, I kind of work my way from front to back of the venue. So from signage that people see as they're walking up to like creative installations, to our merchandise line, to our merchandise store, which you got to see in person.
I'm smiling. That made me kind of grin because I mean, what you've done with the merch and how you lay it out. Is there anywhere online if people wanted to see that? Is there photos somewhere on Instagram or something where we could see what the merch look and feel is, like that you've created an experience and really like there's new, like you put flooring down so that the like when you enter the merch area, it feels, even at your feet, it feels different.
Yeah. There probably is somewhere, but it might be better if I just post some on the page.
Yeah, sure.
I can post some photos after this call.
After this will save, so you can like post some stuff just like in the comment section. That'll work.
Okay, great. I can do that.
Just like
so merchandise all the way into the venue to I work with our production manager on stage design, and then all the graphics that are going to go on all the screens and all the different lighting looks. I work with our lighting director, and then down to actually each individual song that is sung.
Yeah.
There is a specific look and design for it. And so many weeks in advance, I'm working with different video contractors to actually design a look for each of these songs. Right. And then we head backstage, and so I work on all of our hospitality rooms, all our dressing rooms and green rooms to kind of bring the whole brand throughout it. And then
because there's tons of guests at these events, like not just the Bethel community, but also like outside speakers or worship or whatever, that you're doing like hospitality, not just for the people like front of house, like backstage, there's a whole other level of hospitality.
Yeah. And so there's many people that are actually doing the hands-on work running it. I'm kind of coming in as the overarching person, picking furniture and, putting cool fun signs in there, little like photo booths and stuff. And then you can find me usually side stage at the event, and I'm prepping every speaker that's going on stage or every transition that's happening. I'll stand side stage and make sure everyone's got whatever prop or whatever item they need to head out there and let them know what they need to do.
Yeah, this is where your Enneagram 8 comes in real strong. Side stage
Real
Steph
strong.
on the radio, directing, passing mics, content, gear. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, just right in the action.
Yeah.
And you just hope that everyone shows up at their specified time. There's a couple fun moments where some didn't. And oh, it was great.
Yeah.
My production manager and I were both standing there looking at each other like we don't have anyone to go up next because I don't know where they were. They just didn't show up. And we were trying to decide it was going to be him or me who's going to have to go out there.
And you're like, because of the nature of your job, you're in like yoga pants, like
I was
not
ready.
You're not stage. You're not dressing for stage.
Yeah, I think luckily in that circumstance, Jen Johnson walked by and I grabbed her and said, "Hey, I need you to head out there."
Fill some time. Yeah. So for you, what are some things that when you think of whenever the future will be that you can do events again, like what are some things you're most looking forward to? Because you love your job. So like, what are some things that you miss? You're like, I can't wait to get back to this.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I love that we do on tour and on worship nights is we always do ministry time. And it's an opportunity where our worship leaders get to share a bit, and they also get to share some testimonies and then pray for people. And it's just been so powerful to see people all over the world really praying for each other, because the way they do it is like, they're not just like praying like a blanket prayer for someone.
Yeah.
They're asking people in the audience to like turn to one another, and those with their hands raised for people to actually go over to them and find out their name and ask what they can pray for. And there's something just like so tangible about when someone lays hands on you and prays for you.
And like the very thing we can't do, right? Like the power and like there's so much that the church can do online, but there's stuff that is so we have to be together to get the full experience of it. Yeah. Like
so
there's like that laying of hands in prayer thing is so powerful. I'm sure many of us who are watching and part of the conversation today like have had that experience of being the prayer or the receiver of prayer, and it's powerful. And I can't wait till we can do it again. Yeah. And just as we're kind of coming to the end of our we do this show. This Reach and Teach show is normally about how do we reach and teach means evangelism and discipleship. How do we connect with people digitally? But usually I talk about stuff in person too. But because everything's digital right now, that's sort of what the focus is for the next foreseeable many weeks as we meet on Mondays. But can you talk a little bit more too? I'm thinking in Reach and Teach how this album you guys have just come out with called Peace really does connect with an opportunity for us to reach people, to bring them something of hope and life and peace, like calm for their anxiety and their fears. And teach, it's a tool that can be used for our own discipleship as we meet with God in this time. So tell us again a little bit about this album, because people are coming and going off the live stream. So before we drop off, just give us a little synopsis again about what this thing is, and let's try to send people towards it.
Yeah. So the producers actually studied the science of sound to learn what sounds and frequencies together actually bring peace and bring calmness. And so this album was made to do that. Really, like we joke, it's like it'll put you to sleep, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's just this real sweet sound that really is very calming. And I think a lot of people need that right now.
Yeah.
And just to like speak to what you're talking about with evangelism, I just felt spurred on to say this, but I think this is the greatest time for evangelism, because people are looking for hope. They are looking for answers, and we actually have them. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's literally the easiest time to evangelize, because everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is a bit confused, and everyone is looking for something. And it's so easy to reach out to people. It's so easy to make a phone call. It's so easy to, send a little DM on Instagram. It's so easy to share your faith right now.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage people to take hold of that opportunity and, use this time to reach out to people that you maybe haven't heard of in a while, because you got a great excuse now. And no, really, like sometimes I think people can think, well, it feels a bit weird just to like randomly contact that person from, my past.
Yeah.
And it's not that weird anymore.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
I think there's a great opportunity to do that and to reach out to the people that God's laying on your heart.
Yeah. When I just think so often the conversation that I'm having in my house right now is like, how are people getting through such a stressful or scary time, or just a time of a lot of loss for a lot of people? How are people getting through this without Jesus? And I don't mean that in, I hope I never am saying that in arrogance. So you have to be so careful how you say that. And I don't want to necessarily post it on the internet as a quote that way. But this idea of like, we have hope and we have an assurance, we have peace, we have someone even just to pray, to be able to pray and connect with that. We know even just like the biochemical thing that prayer can do for us, the listening to worship songs, like all this stuff that can actually like bring us peace. And there's so many people who don't have that. And so, as you're saying, it's an amazing opportunity for us to reach people. I think people are more open for you to just say, I'm praying, I'm praying today. Has anybody got a prayer request? Just private message me, DM me. I'd love to pray for you. Like people are more open, I think, than they have been in a long time. And the church could be much bigger, should be, I think, much bigger when we come out the other side of this, because we've had an opportunity to meet people in a really dark time and bring them light and life.
Oh, yeah. I really believe we're going to see more salvations than we've seen in decades come out of this time. I think we're going to see exponential growth in the global church, and I'm really excited for that. And I think that's something that I'm keeping my eyes on too. It's just like God is doing something through all of this. And like when we get out of this season, I really think it's just going to be a big party, like something to celebrate.
Yeah, it's so good. Well, Steph, hey, thank you so much for jumping on this show with me today. You've got some, I don't know if you know some of these people or not, but you've got people saying hey to you in the comments. So after we end, go on there if you want to interact with Steph. She'll comment so you can find her as well. And I think she's going to throw up a few pictures of some things. But everyone go check out this album Peace by Bethel Music that just came out. If you haven't found it yet, I think it will help you, and I think it will serve you. And also it's a great tool if you're looking for something to offer to people to connect them to something hopeful and peaceful in this time, who maybe don't know Jesus and don't have that kind of hope and peace. We can reach them and connect with them through the power of this kind of music. Steph, thanks.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.